Hello, Chiefs Kingdom. Good evening, and welcome to the Arrowhead Kingdom Chiefs Cast live from the MKE, where we will be talking Chiefs and all things NFL. As always, I'm Josh, and tonight we are talking Joe Delaney. So, a big reminder that all Chiefs fans are invited to join us for game day. Visit arrowheadkingdom.org to learn more about the group and find your local chapter, and I'll be able to talk here shortly. So please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Chiefs and specifically Joe Delaney with our guest, Adam Jassy. So welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening, Josh. Pleasure to be on the show. Really looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to providing a podcast that's both entertaining as well as informative for all Chief fans that are tuning into the podcast.
Yeah, we got some great stuff, some great stories tonight. And we're, of course, presented by Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. Visit them at completewedo.com. So let's get started with the most obvious question. You don't live in Kansas City, and to my knowledge, you've never lived in Kansas City. So how did you become such a big Chiefs fan?
It's a question that so many people have asked me through the years. So here's how it started. My parents were both born and bred in Brooklyn here in New York, and they met, they fell in love, they got married. Now, but how does Kansas City enter the picture? My dad wanted to become a doctor. So when he was applying to medical school, he was applying to schools in New York, but he also was expanding his search to other areas. Ultimately, fate had it where he decided that the best move was to go to the osteopathic program in Kansas City, and he accepted their offer. So he went there, and this happened to be the osteopathic program that was founded by Ewing Kaufman. Ewing Kaufman being the same Ewing Kaufman who ultimately became the owner of the Kansas City Royals. And that's where it all started. They lived in Kansas City for more than 4 years. In his first year, the Chiefs made it to Super Bowl I. And he really wasn't yet into football at that time. When he grew up in Brooklyn, my father, he was as passionate as a Brooklyn Dodger fan as we are as Kansas City Chiefs fans. But when they moved to Los Angeles, he just quit not only the Dodgers, but he quit baseball and sports, period. Like, he just was so pissed off that they had left, and he basically lived down the street from Ebbets Field. So when he moved to Kansas City, wasn't really getting into it. He wasn't following the Kansas City A's. When the Royals came to be, and Ewing Kaufman was leaving tickets in the mailboxes of his students to drum up interest, he decided, you know what? Okay, I'll get back into it. And that same year, 1969, my older brother Lewis was born in Kansas City. So he's like, okay, I have a son now. I'm gonna get back into baseball. I'm gonna be a Kansas City Royals fan. I'm gonna start with a fresh, clean slate. I'm gonna make my son a Kansas City Royals fan. That fall, Chiefs go back to the Super Bowl and then win Super Bowl IV. And he gets caught up in the craze with my mom, and he sees how everyone's passionate about the Chiefs. And he's like, you know what? For the first time, they both became football fans, and like, yeah, we'll be Chiefs fans too. But they graduated from the medical program a few months after the Chiefs won Super Bowl IV. There was a decision to make. My parents loved Kansas City. They wanted to stay in Kansas City, but both sides of the family were back home waiting. They were parents that were alive. They wanted to see their new grandson or their nephew. And they're like, you know what, we gotta go home. But they're like, but we want to somehow be able to remember our time in Kansas City. So what did they decide to do? They made the decision that, well, we're Kansas City Chiefs and Royals fans. We're going to make our kids Kansas City Chiefs and Royals fans. So when I was born in New York 3 years later in 1973, I was born, in Interborough Hospital in Brooklyn. My very first room was a red room, and on the nightstand next to my bed was a Kansas City Chiefs lamp. I was born into it. And I thought, you know, when I boarded that school bus for the first time, that everybody of my new friends would be Kansas City Chiefs and Royals fans. Not meant to be. They were a bunch of Yankee fans giving me a lot of business once they found out that I was a Royals fan. This was at the time when the Yankees were knocking the Royals out of the playoffs all the time. And with the Chiefs, people were just laughing at me because this, you know, we live a charmed life now in the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era, where you have 8 consecutive winning seasons and 6 consecutive playoff appearances, 5 consecutive division championships, 2 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. back then, I grew up in the Steve Fuller days where 500 was considered to be an accomplishment. 500 now would be considered to be an absolute disaster.
Abysmal failure.
Yeah, abysmal fail, especially with Mahomes. Like, we wasted a year of Patrick Mahomes' Hall of Fame career on a 500 team, which is going to be hard to do in 17 games, but you know what I'm saying. So that was the thing too, that when I started becoming aware of the Chiefs, I mean, Steve Fuller, they took him over with Joe Montana. Nick Larry was my first favorite Chiefs player because he was doing all the scoring, because their offense was so inept that they'd get 3 points or 6 points or 9 points in the game. And my favorite players on defense were the Garys, Gary Spanny, Gary Green, Gary Barbaro, Art Still also as well, but he wasn't a Gary. But it was rough. It was rough being a Chiefs fan, but I was raised to be a Chiefs fan, and I didn't know any better. And I saw other teams in the Super Bowl, and I figured, well, the Chiefs will ultimately get there. And I had to wait till I was 46 years old for them to finally make it to the Super Bowl. But some things are well worth the wait. And with Joe Delaney, and we'll get to this too. Thing about Joe Delaney, which made him my new favorite football player when he arrived on the scene, was he epitomized hope and promise. If the Chief fans that are tuning in know what I'm talking about. When he joined as a rookie, he won AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. He made the Pro Bowl. He ran for over 1,100 yards. He had 500-yard gains in that season. And, 1981 was more predicated on the run as compared to the pass, especially with the offense that Marv Levy was running that days. He added a 6th game where he had 100 combined rushing receiving yards. He gave them hope, and he gave the Chiefs, thanks to having Delaney on the team, the Chiefs had their first winning record in 8 years, since the year I was born. 1973 was the last winning record. 1981, the Chiefs went 9-7, and they only were 5 teams that made the playoffs. I'd have to look at the AFC East, Central, and West, but if they had 7 playoff teams, I would probably imagine that the Chiefs at 9-7 would have made the playoffs that year if they would play under the current format. But we had hope that here, with this talented player, we had a player that was going to bring the Chiefs. He already got them a winning record. He was going to take the Chiefs to the playoffs. If we got a competent quarterback, we would be able to maybe build a Super Bowl team out of that. And we had that opportunity, of course, in '83, but we take Todd Blackledge and not Dan Marino.
Dan Marino. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Dan Marino, I to me, that's one of the greatest what ifs in sports history is what if the Chiefs took Dan Marino? And then you look at the late 80s and the early 90s and those defenses they put together. And I mean, good God, what would that have looked like?
It would have been amazing. And then the other thing is, Bo Jackson is, a Royals and a Raiders player. In 1979, in the baseball draft, the Chiefs drafted Dan Marino in the 4th round. And then later in that same draft, they drafted John Elway. But they knew Elway was going to go play college, but they wanted to try Marino. They thought they were going to get. And but what happened was Pitt, where he went to college, said that he couldn't play baseball. And he really liked to play football. But he said later on that if the Royals made him their 1st round pick, he just would have felt obligated to sign with the Royals, and then we would have been deprived of Dan Marino's brilliance in the NFL, which would probably led to a playoff win in 1990, 1994, but I digress. But
yeah, I mean that's another great what if that I've never really thought about is what if Dan Marino was a Royals player instead? I mean, that could have been really interesting. I mean, Dan Marino is one of those guys that I think has kind of proved over life that he can do whatever he wants. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Dan Marino's actually put a couple of stakes in the ground doing Hollywood type production type of stuff. I mean, he's financed movies. He has a kid, I believe, who got really into acting and I think went to NYU. But I actually had a friend from another life out in the Colorado area who had a son who went to acting school with Dan Marino's kid, and Dan Marino financed some like random pilot that they pitched to HBO. So the whole thing of him being on Ace Ventura was less random than it seems, actually.
Yeah, you don't say. Absolutely. And that's the thing too. Like like for my son's generation, they're like wondering like, who do you compare Patrick Mahomes to? The first person I think of is Dan Marino because of how dominant an offensive force he was. The difference, of course, being Mahomes is much more mobile than Marino could ever aspire to be. But Marino was shattering records. Mahomes is shattering records. And Marino made the Super Bowl in the second year as a starter. Mahomes made the Super Bowl in the second year as a starter, but won in that Super Bowl, not Marino. But that will be the difference between Mahomes and Marino, is that when it's all said and done, presuming Mahomes has a long, illustrious career, Mahomes is going to be in so many Super Bowls and win so many Super Bowls that it'll be something that Dan Marino only wishes that he could have had that type of team before him. But we are very fortunate to be living this life as a Chiefs fan right now, because we are clearly in the golden age of being Chiefs fans right now.
How lucky we are to be alive right now. That's we'll quote some Hamilton right there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's great. So talking about the Chiefs, I mean, let's get a little bit more into the team. So you've got a long history of being a fan with the team. So I was born in 81. So I missed some of the stuff that you're talking about. I would say that I kind of came into my kind of formative years of being a Chiefs fan in the late 80s and and into the early 90s and seeing just incompetent offensive play and great defenses. And it's always the what if, and if we just get a guy that could throw the ball. And so I was very cognizant of Joe Montana coming in and those periods of time, but also how dominant like the Bills were and everything. But let's talk favorite memories of being a Chiefs fan. So of all the time that you've been a Kansas City fan, living, in New York and just following the team, what's your favorite memory that you have to date of being a Chiefs fan?
Well, when you pose a question like that, I always like to use the term Mount Rushmore. Like, what is my Mount Rushmore being a Chiefs fan?
Yeah.
And I've lived a very charmed and blessed life. I thankfully have a friend that is very well connected and is able to hook me up with being at events at the right time. So I consider myself like a Forrest Gump type of person that's been there forever. The one game I always wanted to be at more than anything else was the Chiefs hosting the AFC Championship game, winning the game, and going on to the Super Bowl. Because the Chiefs made the Super Bowl 3 years before I was born. And I look at those Super Bowl I, Super Bowl IV footages, and I'm like thinking I'm watching a sci-fi movie, because I don't feel that connection because I wasn't around for that to experience it. So I thought when the Chiefs went undefeated at home in 95 and 97, 13-3, 1 seed, like, all right, this is their year. So I booked flights and hotels, and they obviously the Lynn Elliott game and then the Vaseline game against Denver, they came up short. So I had to cancel the hotel and flights, couldn't do that. I had a family function that I was hosting a major party that prevented me from going to see the Chiefs actually hosting that AFC Championship game against the Patriots. So I missed that. So then, they obviously lost that game. So when the Ravens lost to the Titans, and then the Chiefs made a huge comeback against the Texans, and all of a sudden the Chiefs were now hosting the AFC Championship game again, and they were hosting a 6 seed, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to go. This is it. This is the game I'm going to go to. If ever there's a year that they're going to make the Super Bowl, it's this year. So I took my son and my friend hook us up. It was a hard ticket, but he got us in, and we saw the Chiefs, win the AFC Championship game. I was there on the 10-yard line, field level. I was right on that side of the field when Mahomes did that unforgettable 27-yard scamper for the touchdown. He went right past us in our section en route to the end zone. And it was amazing. And, then as amazing as that moment was, I think, and we were talking about this before this podcast, and you were at this game too. When he hit Watkins on that bomb, everyone was celebrating except for me. And I don't know if you remember this, there was a flag on that play. Yep. And I had memories of the Charvarius Ward interception that was called back with the D Ford. I'm like, they're going to call back.
55 offside. Yep.
I was yet celebrating. I was like, is this going to count? Is this going to count? When as soon as the referee pointed towards the defense, I lost it. I mean, I hugged my son and I was like, I said, they're up 18 points, 6 minutes to go. I'm like, this is going to happen. They're going to actually go. And then when Frank Clark made the final sack on Tannehill to clinch it, to go to kneel down situation, I just remember I hugged my son, and for a while I was crying. I was like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. And then when it was done and they were going on the field, and as I was hugging strangers, that we were going to the Super Bowl, I remember looking at the Ring of Fame and looking at the players, and the first person that I looked at was Joe Delaney. And I was just like pointing to the sky, and I was really happy for that. That's probably my favorite moment as a Chiefs fan, despite the fact that 2 weeks later, thanks to that same friend, my son and I, along with both of my brothers, we were in Miami and we saw Super Bowl 54 and we saw the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. And yeah, no doubt, to see the Chiefs win a Super Bowl is a bucket list thing. But you also have to understand, and I think for the Chief fans that have been through the rough and tumble years and all those close calls of the Schottenheimer years and Dick Vermeil years, and even the Andy Reid years before in 2019, I think there's an appreciation of being in the house at Arrowhead where it's all Chiefs fans and you're going to the Super Bowl, that you've arrived, that is still and always will be my favorite moment of being there, even over the Super Bowl, because it was just that glass ceiling we could never break through. And finally they did that. My very first Chiefs game I ever went to, I was mentioning this last night too, was in 1995. For the Chiefs fans during that 13-3 year. This was the James Hasty pick six game against the Raiders. And that the Raiders were actually kind of a good team that year. And it was an early season showdown and the Chiefs won. And it was my first ever time at Arrowhead. And my God, I mean, to experience that whole game and the atmosphere and the intensity, and then to see it end like that, I mean, it was just craziness. I could only imagine the only regular season game that could beat that from a jubilation standpoint is the Pete Cianovich 54-yard field goal to beat Denver, and the Dante Hall punt return to beat the Broncos, the 92-yard punt return where, there was a lot of illegal blocks in the back, but it wasn't cold, so it counts, no problem. But he beat 19 people to get there. But that was great. But that wasn't the biggest Chiefs win of that day, because somewhere in a hospital in Texas, some baby was born named Patrick Mahomes. That very day I was at Arrowhead was the September 17th, 1995, the day Patrick Mahomes was born. So those are my favorite experiences of being at a Chiefs game as a fan. But there is one more spot in Mount Rushmore, and that has to do with something that we're going to get into detail. But I'll say right now that it was being in attendance at the 101 banquet in Kansas City in 2004. And there's a reason for that. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, during the course of the podcast.
So just to recap, your Mount Rushmore, who are the three that we put there so far?
Well, AFC Championship game, being in the house of the Titans, Super Bowl 54, beating the Niners, being my first ever experience at Arrowhead with the James Hasty pick six day on the same day Patrick Mahomes was born, and the 101 banquet.
And then the 101 banquet. All right, so let's get into how we got to the 101 banquet. And I just have to comment, the jersey you're wearing has what number on it?
37.
All right, so who wore number 37? That number hasn't been worn for a long time, almost 40 years at this point. And I know that because I'm almost 40 years old. So number 37, who wore 37?
Joe Delaney wore number 37. He's the last Chiefs player to wear it. Now, how do we get here? And how did I get to the 101 banquet in 2004 and sat at a table with the Delaney family? Okay. Well, one thing I realized that when I went to Kansas City for the first time, and I've been to Kansas City like 20 times in my life, no exaggeration. When I get to Kansas City, all I need is to get my rent a car. I don't need GPS or Waze, know exactly where I'm going. Mm-hmm. So, but when I first went to Kansas City in the 90s, I was expecting something. to show some sort of remembrance for Joe Delaney. We should backtrack just a little bit.
Let's take a step back. Let's talk about Joe Delaney, the player. Let's talk about how he got into the league. Let's talk about what kind of player he was. Because, I mean, honestly, this is a little before my time. So this is all stuff that I've heard in retrospect. But let's talk about Joe Delaney as a player and what made his career notable.
Joe Delaney was a standout football player, but at a relatively small school called Northwestern Louisiana State. It's not the same Northwestern that's in the Big Ten. That Northwestern's in Chicago.
That's in Chicago. That's in Evanston, Illinois. That's not a small town.
Yeah, definitely not. Northwestern Louisiana State is in a place in Louisiana, and I'm going to probably mispronounce the name, but I think it's called they teach you these, something like that. It starts. If you got to look it up, and you'll see why it's so difficult to pronounce it. But he was a standout football player. He had a distinguished college career, but he also was on a track team that I think won the NCAA championship in track. On that team, the track team and the football team it was in, we were talking about Dan Marino earlier. Well, if you remember the Marx brothers, Mark Clayton and Mark Duper was a college teammate of Joe Delaney and his track teammate too. So you had a college football team in a small school that had Joe Delaney and one of the better definitely in the top echelon receivers in the 1980s, Mark Duper, who was a burner for the Dolphins. But he was really good, but he was a little undersized. I think Joe Delaney was 5'10", 5'11", but he was really fast. And the Chiefs drafted him in the second round in the 1981 draft. And he wasn't the starter right off the bat. Ted McKnight was the Chiefs starting running back to start the year. Delaney would see the field, but he wasn't the starter. But in week 5, I think McKnight was hurt or maybe he was ineffective. I mean, I was only 8 years old at the time, so I don't know exactly what happened. But Marv Levy decided to make Joe Delaney the starting running back, and that was the first of his 500-yard games. I think it was at the Patriots when that happened. And he never lost the starting job. As long as he was healthy, Joe Delaney was the guy, the starting running back, and he became the focal point of the team. So, I mean, Joe Delaney is still revered to this day at the campus of Northwestern Louisiana State. They named the spring football game after him. I believe there's a statue of Joe Delaney outside of the stadium. He is their most famous alum. I know that when Northwestern State has made the NCAA tournament in basketball a couple of years, usually CBS posts a graphic of location of the school, when it was founded, and notable alumni. And I think they've been in the tournament 3 times. And every single time I've seen them in the tournament, they listed notable alumni. The very first thing, Joe Delaney. So he's tethered to their heart and soul of that program and that university. And they're very honored to have him as a distinguished alumni.
Yep. So I believe that both the parish and the county is pronounced Natchitoches, which is obviously French, like most of Louisiana. I might be butchering that, but I spent enough time down there and got schooled on things that I said completely wrong. So I think that's how it's pronounced.
I'll go with your for sure.
But yeah, it's up in the kind of Shreveport area, so it's going to be up in the upper kind of area, not to be confused with Nacogdoches, which is in Texas, which is really close to Tyler, which is out in the area where Patrick Mahomes is from. But so Natchitoches is how I believe that it's pronounced in Louisiana, so up in the northwest part, so nowhere close to Baton Rouge and New Orleans, which are the parts that most people know of Louisiana. By the way, if you haven't spent time in that state, that is probably one of the coolest parts of the U.S. That is one of the truly just unique cuisines that we have. I don't even know how to describe it aside from just make a trip down there. So anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Joe Delaney. So Joe Delaney came into the NFL. He hit the Chiefs like a meteor. He had a similar kind of trajectory to another famous running back, Christian Okoye, who came over, ran track, went to a small school, ran all over the league. And so then after a couple of seasons, something really crazy happened with Joe Delaney. So let's talk about that.
That's right. So he married his high school sweetheart, Carolyn. And by the time he was 24 years old, the two of them had already 3 kids, old daughters. So, he was a family man and everything was going well. That was until June 29th, 1983. This was before training camp. So Joe was back home in Louisiana. I think he was at a park in Monroe, Louisiana, called Chenault Park. And he was just enjoying a day with his friends. So the story goes, and I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. But it is June 29th in Louisiana. So you can imagine weather in Louisiana then is hot.
Hot as hell. It's hot as hell.
Yeah. So what happened was there was a man-made lake there that was created, and there was no lifeguards, no supervision, no warning signs. There was a group of boys, and 3 of them decided to beat the heat and jump into the lake to try to cool off. But unbeknownst to them, this man-made lake went from shallow to very deep very quickly. And what happened was these kids did not know how to swim. And thankfully for them, not everybody in that group was jumping in the lake, but they did. So the ones that were seeing their buddies swim in the pool, they saw that they were struggling. And immediately they started screaming for help, racing out to try to get somebody to help save their friends from drowning. And you'd have to imagine that there was hundreds of people there at that time. I mean, I don't know the exact number. I mean, again, I wasn't there that day. This is how I understand the story to be. But what I do know is this: of the people that were there, only one person decided to act to race to that lake to try to save those boys. And that was Joe Delaney. And as amazing as that was, there's just one problem here. Joe Delaney did not know how to swim either. So despite that, he still jumped into the lake to try to save children that he didn't even know. Yeah. And I'm not sure how he was able to do it, but he got one of those boys and was able with his strength to get him and push him to shallow, safer ground. And that kid lived. But by the time the rescue team came by because the 911 call went out, and when the ambulance came with the rescue team, the other 2 boys and Joe died. They drowned in that lake. And Joe Delaney was 24 years old. And yet again, we talked about this earlier. He was the promise. He was the hope that the Chiefs were going to become winners again. And he was gone just like that. And it was a profound loss to the Chiefs franchise and to the fan base. Me, I was a 9-year-old boy when that happened. And what I was crying about was the loss of my favorite Chiefs player. You find out late, when you understand the story, you realize that, my God, what a heroic thing that Joe Delaney did. How many people would do that? Especially how many athletes that are star athletes would do that. If Joe Delaney was a special teams player that was not really heard of much, I don't think the story would really resonate as much. But this was a person in the prime of his football career whose best days were still ahead of him. And he's gone. And it was the ripple effects it led off the evening news of all the major news outlets. Then Vice President, future President George Herbert Walker Bush flew down to Louisiana for the ceremony, for the funeral on the 4th of July in the high school gymnasium in oppressive heat conditions. President Reagan gave Joe Delaney the Presidential Citizens Medal. Now, just to explain how significant that is, I believe that is the second highest award that a civilian can get in the United States. And since it was introduced in the late 60s, only 175 Americans have ever received this honor. Of that 175, 22 of them have received this award posthumously. Joe Delaney's one. Roberto Clemente, the baseball legend who died in a plane crash while delivering supplies to earthquake victims in Puerto Rico, where he was from, is another. The 6 Sandy Hook teachers who gave their lives in the Sandy Hook massacre. They're in that group. And then there's other notable, people involved with the government and, have, secretaries of state and things like that. But there's 22 people, and Joe Delaney is in that group. That's how rare it is. He's the only NFL player to be in that 175, dead or alive, to receive this award. He's the only person with any ties to Kansas City to ever receive this award. There are some people from Kansas that got the Presidential Citizens Award, most notably Bob Dole.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe Delaney
30 miles from where I grew up.
Yeah, there you go. So
yeah, Russell, Kansas.
It's that's how big this was. And it was Carolyn, his widow. She never even dated another man after that. She's like, Joe was her soulmate, and she realized that no matter, even if she tried, no one would ever approach to her the meaning of what Joe was to her. And Joe was her everything, and that's how it's been. And the people I feel most sorry about are his children. They never knew really who their father was. They only have heard stories from their mom and from people, that have known them, but they lost their dad at a very young age. But they've all grown up to be, they're now about 40 years old or a little bit above that. They've all, are doing great stuff. And this whole process of what I've been able to do, I've been able to connect with everybody in that family, and they're very, very appreciative of what's been happening here. And they're very excited about all the things that have been done to finally give Joe some recognition. We'll get into that, during this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, the only other NFL player that I think you can throw in the same type of vein is like Pat Tillman.
Oh yeah,
it's the same type of thing. I mean, it's just somebody that kind of right in the middle of a prime NFL career where you're supposed to be the celebrity and you're making money and you're living the dream, playing the kids game at a professional level and so on and so forth. And you just kind of think of everything but yourself in a moment, and things just, go south. And there's not really anything left except for, people like you to help pick up those pieces. So let's talk about the next step in that situation, which would be the 37 Forever Foundation. So tell me about that foundation and what happened there.
All right. So when I started coming to Kansas City in the 90s, I started attending Chiefs games. And now we're more than a decade removed from the tragedy. You're thinking that there's going to be some sort of remembrance in Kansas City for it. I mean, he got the Presidential Citizens Medal. This isn't something that's just freely given. This is pretty elite company that he's sharing this with. But to my surprise and disappointment and astonishment, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. There was nothing in Arrowhead to say anything. There was no statue in front of the place. There was nothing in Kansas City that was named after him. And this went on. I came back for a Chiefs game the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and there was nothing done. So I figured, okay, I would like to try to do something. And now in the late 90s, in 1999, there was some bulletin boards coming in. The internet was starting to become more and more prominent. And the Kansas City Star had a bulletin board. And I remember during one day, I decided to make a topic. What about Joe Delaney? And I was making my pitch as to something should be done. And immediately started taking hold that there was a lot of Chief fans that saw it the same way. So yeah, you're right, Adam. Something should be done. So a grassroots movement started called the 37 Forever Foundation. We partnered with the American Red Cross. We provided free swim lessons to underprivileged children in both the Kansas City and Louisiana communities. It lasted for 5 years. And actually with the very last of our money, we were able to use that money to make sure that Joe Delaney's grandchildren were the last recipients to get the free swim lessons. So it was a nice personal touch. We had a couple of foundation weekends in Kansas City where all the Chief fans that were spread out throughout the United States to be on this board, the executive board. We were able to do a couple of great outings, got some press coverage. I remember a few of the Fox and ABC affiliates ran with the story with it. We did a golf outing that Art still was in our company, and he was there for it, and he loved what we were doing. Problem that with that weekend was we had the weekend before the Chiefs home opener in 2001, and we had it the night before the Chiefs home opener. The night of that banquet was Saturday, September 8th, 2001. It went well. Problem was,
wow, three days before,
less than 72 hours, 9/11 happens, and I'm flying back to New York. And I clearly remember when I was flying back to New York that I was flying over the towers. I saw the towers. This was about not even 36 hours to go before the unthinkable happened. And that, for a fledgling foundation that was trying to get its bearings, something like that just really took a lot of the wind out of the sails. It was hard to maintain. We did another foundation the next year, but it didn't have quite the same. It was successful, but it didn't measure up to what we were trying to build on. And I realized when I flew home to New York that this is something that we're going to keep trying, but we figured that the writing's on the wall, and this is not going to last for much longer, unfortunately. But we had a website at the time, and we kept with the website. And good thing that it did happen, because that following year in 2003, June 29th was the 20th anniversary of the tragedy. And news outlets were doing features on this. In Louisiana, they were doing a whole week of coverage on that. They reached out to me and other members of the foundation, and we were part of the feature. But more prominently, nationally, Sports Illustrated, Rick Riley did in that week's article, did the point after, which he did every single week. He dedicated the whole point after to Joe Delaney. He mentioned the 37 Forever Foundation. Nobody in 37 Forever was contacted by him. We didn't feel upset, but it just showed that he did his research, and he made sure it's there. You could actually still see that article if you do Rick Riley, No Ordinary Joe, and just put that in a Google search. You'll see that article, and you'll see the mention of 37 Forever Foundation. But more importantly than that, ESPN, for their Sunday night sports center on the 4th of July weekend, they were going to do a 10-minute feature in their hour-plus long sports center on the Sunday night. I was contacted by Andy Tennant, and he said, Adam, we found you on the net, the 37 Forever Foundation. We're going to be sending John Anderson down to Louisiana to do it. We're going to do this. But the one thing we need is, we don't have anything Joe Delaney memorabilia wise that we want to throw into the feature. Do you happen to have anything? I'm like, yeah, I actually do. I sent him this jersey. I sent him football cards of Joe Delaney, and I sent him a Chiefs helmet that I had. You know what? I might even have it. I have it.
Yeah, grab it.
This helmet that was in my room alongside the Chiefs lamp. I mean, this thing's about 50 years old. I sent that too. He said, great. He set it up with postage, and he said, we'll pay for the postage. I sent it out. They use it in the feature. They sent it all back to me, and they gave me a Sports Center bowl cap that I gladly wore out over several summers, and sweated it up, and it aired. And that happened the same week that the Sports Illustrated came out. Lo and behold, within a month, Kansas City Chiefs make an announcement that being inducted into the Chiefs Hall of Fame, Joe Delaney, 2004. And by this time, I already befriended Carolyn, and I was keeping her updated with everything that was happening. She calls me that day, and she says, Adam, this does not happen if not for you and everybody else at the foundation. It's like, when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame at the 101 banquet in March, you need to be there along with other members of the foundation. We want you as our honored guest. So that's March great. 2004, black tie event for all of you that don't know what this is about. The 101 banquet is a mixture of a Chiefs award show as well as an NFL award show. So while the Chiefs were handing out their Mackley Hill Award, Derek Thomas Award, and everything like that, Commissioner Paul Tagliabue was there presenting the NFL Offensive Player of the Year to Peyton Manning, Defensive Player of the Year to Ray Lewis, and they're there. I mean, they're there in the house. And then we were there at an after party, and I'm there literally shoulder to shoulder with Peyton Manning. Now, keep in mind, this was 2 months after the no punt game. I was in no business. I was in no mood to
I want to see Peyton Manning then.
Peyton Manning. I was still pissed that was happening. But I was showing you before this thing started that picture's worth 1,000 words. I have this in my man cave. This is a picture of me, a younger me with a little bit of hair still, but there's Lamar Hunt and Norma Hunt. And I have other pictures from the night too, but this is the one that means the most to me because, I mean,
hair's overrated, by the way.
Yeah. So it was an amazing night, and to be there and to see Carolyn accept the award in Joe's honor and standing there and watching that, which with her daughter sitting still at the table with us, and being there with other members of the foundation, Phil Kloster, who was the president of 37 Forever, following me, and other distinguished people that were there like Scott Lentz and Kyle Terrell, who was about Chiefs Planet. It was just, those guys were really, really, it was just, that's why it's on the Mount Rushmore. I know that, and Carolyn said it herself too. I know that I played a very tiny role in Kansas City Chiefs history. That when I see Joe Delaney's name in that Hall of Fame, I know that my efforts, it's because of that he's there. But it's, as I mentioned before we went on here, it may have been my vision, but it took a community of a bunch of Chiefs fans that were dedicated and passionate about this like I was to bring us to that moment. So I'm forever thankful and in debt to all those people that, and there's a lot of names I did not mention, but they are equally responsible for bringing us to that moment. And with that, and when he was inducted officially, when his name was revealed at the home opener against the Houston Texans, I thought I was done. I thought that was it. You know, he's in the Hall of Fame. There's a bust of him, and when you go inside the interior of Arrowhead Stadium, if you haven't been there, that show all the members that are there and show the history. He's there. He's prominently there. I did a tour of Arrowhead Stadium with my son a couple of years ago. And you see pictures of the Chiefs through the years. There's a few pictures of Joe Delaney as you walk the halls. So he's being remembered. And, you know, every June 29th, the Chiefs with their social media, they make it a point of business to mention Joe Delaney and what he's remembered for. And for years, BJ Kissel did an amazing job of giving Joe his just due. And you'd have people like Vahe Gregorian and Chiefs teammates like Deron Sherry, Art Still, Carlos Carson. They all really did. They would always wax poetic about Joe Delaney's life. And I thought I was done. I thought I accomplished my purpose. And then things changed last year. And that leads to, I don't know whether I should stop here or should I just
no. So I mean, I just want to interrupt here for just a second. So the first thing that I want to throw out, I appreciate you saying that you played a small part in Chiefs history. I would argue with you that this was no small part. I mean, obviously, Joe Delaney is somebody whose legacy should be remembered, and I think being at the 101 banquet and seeing his name on the same program as Peyton Manning and Ray Lewis, who are names that are going to be remembered forever in football, is no small accomplishment. And I think that's exactly where his name should have been. I agree with you that it took too long to get there. So I before we go too far here, I want to ask, why do you think that the Chiefs, and particularly the NFL, took so long to recognize somebody like that? Is this a situation where he didn't play long enough? Is this just kind of the NFL has to be forced into things like this? What was your take on that?
I think it's more centered on the Chiefs' decision. I mean, the NFL, I mean, for what Joe Delaney did, look, Walter Payton is definitely worthy of what he's done in his life to have an NFL Man of the Year. I always feel like, and you know, they should also do something for Pat Tillman too. And they may have done something for Pat Tillman, but they should have done something for Joe Delaney. They really should have done something. And it's never too late to try to do something to do that. And maybe these efforts in Kansas City that we're looking to do right now are going to ultimately lead to something where the will catch the attention of the NFL and they'll be able to do something. Possibly a goal that I'll throw out there that I've thought about is this. Well, 2023, Kansas City is going to be hosting the NFL draft. That happens to be also 40 years since the tragedy. Mm-hmm. Can the NFL between now and then put something together and maybe announce something at the NFL draft? I mean, I would need to get in touch with somebody in the NFL that would pay attention to me. But I will say this: if we accomplish the things that we're accomplishing and we see this through to the end, then I do think it will be harder for the NFL to ignore what this passionate Chiefs fan base can do here, especially with the Chiefs being at the top of their game and being perennial Super Bowl contenders and perennial Super Bowl participants. That's I think this is the perfect time to try to do that, especially with the NFL draft in Kansas City on the horizon.
So let's have fun here for just a second. Let's theoretically spitball. We're programming, producer type of people. We're influencing the NFL. So what pick specifically was Delaney picked?
I think it was the 41st pick in the 1981 draft.
Okay, so obviously the 41st pick is something that we could do. Obviously the 37th pick is something we can do. Obviously the Chiefs can do something. So there you go, NFL. Think about this. We got the 40-year anniversary of one of the greatest sacrifices that I think you could throw out within the NFL. I mean, I think that we're in agreement. There's two names. There's Joe Delaney. There's Pat Tillman. And there's not really anything else that compares in terms of a story of sacrifice right there. We got the draft coming up in Kansas City. So there we go. I mean, that seems like a pretty noble cause to press towards.
Yeah. And there's actually an idea that I actually had a conversation with the Chiefs about, which I'll get into what I've been doing with the Chiefs. But one of the things I had an idea of was, why not make the 37-yard line at Arrowhead Stadium Chiefs colors, red and yellow? Or you have that and maybe have outside the sidelines JD and have 37 on all four sides of the field, facing in both directions. And the Chiefs said to me, that sounds like a really good idea, but you have to understand the NFL is very specific with their standards of what the fields look like. That's something that would be unprecedented. And I don't know if they said, I think the NFL is going to shoot that down. So the Chiefs said it's a good idea, but you have to understand that's not our call. That's the NFL's call. But then I saw, this past year, I remember that being said, when I saw Baltimore Ravens games this year, in the end zones, they had in Baltimore, but they had MO in a different coloring than the rest of the thing. Apparently they had a child. I think that was a cancer victim. I may be getting this wrong, but his name was Mo or Maurice or something like that. And they did that for him. So they could do that for a fan, for a legendary player who gave his life, Presidential Citizens Medal recipient. We're only asking to have the 37-yard marker be going from white to red and yellow. I don't see there being a problem with the count. I don't think it will affect the play. I think that's it. That would be a really just subtle but very nice touch that would make people, people would say, why is the 37-yard line painted red and yellow? What's the significance of that? And then people can understand why. So that's an idea that would be awesome.
I'll throw another example out. How long have the Bears have the George Hollis initials on their jerseys?
That's true.
If something matters, it matters, this, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think different colored hash mark on the sideline would be incredible on the 37-yard line. You would have 4 spots, and it's a situation where, picture yourself with your kid 10 years ago. You're sitting at a game and, Dad, what's going on there? And you get to tell the Joe Delaney story. So
you mentioned the jerseys. In 1983, after the tragedy, the Chiefs did wear on their jerseys, they had on a shoulder pad, like, they have the Lamar Hunt with the thing. They had the Presidential Citizens Medal emblem on it. They only wore it for that year. If you happen to see, if you see file footage from 1983, you're going to see a strange design. That's the Presidential Citizens Medal, and it was done for Joe Delaney. But that they didn't do that afterwards. And then the other thing is this: the Chiefs have never officially retired 37. They have a very strange thing about this, that it is retired. It's just not been officially retired. It's unofficially retired. No one has ever worn 37 since Joe Delaney. Not even in training camp or tryouts. Even when you have like 90 plus people trying out for the team, they'd rather double up on a number than give 37 out. There is a list of retired numbers, but 37 is not there. You have to be a really astute, knowledgeable Chiefs fan to understand that this jersey number is out of circulation. Why the Chiefs have never retired it, I can only speculate as to why. I would have to think that he played just 2 years. He did not die. He died off the field. He didn't die on the field like Mackley Hill did following knee surgery, or Stone Johnson did in a preseason game. He never even played an actual game with the Chiefs, but he died from a neck injury, I think, on a kickoff return. He wore number 36. Mackley Hill wore number 33, by the way. So those are on-field death injuries. Joe Delaney did not die on the field, hence that's why they're not retiring the jersey. But I think because of what he did, I think they said that they cannot give this number out to anybody. So it's in limbo. I wish the Chiefs could officially designate this, but I'm not looking to make enemies of the Chiefs. They have their reasons, and he's in the Hall of Fame, and no one's wearing this jersey. So I guess you just have to just do some independent research and investigation to realize that the Chiefs have quietly retired the number without officially announcing it.
So right now we got 10 retired numbers, right? I believe that's right. So it's 10 retired numbers, and there's 90 Hall of Fame members, something to that effect.
Yes.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, 11th number could potentially be 37. I would definitely say that I'd be on board with that. And, I agree with you. I mean, who knows what the Chiefs and what NFL level of influence on how stuff like that goes is. But yeah, I would say that I'd tend to agree with you that, I mean, 2 seasons probably plays more of a, I guess, factor in this than it probably should. So,
yeah.
Yep. So let's talk more about the next effort. So the 37 Forever Foundation shut down in 2004, correct?
Right after the induction, and I know that a bunch of members were there for it in Arrowhead. I figured that was the perfect time to call it quits. We were able to get re-swim lessons from the American Red Cross. We got the word out. Chiefs put him in the Hall of Fame. Mission accomplished.
Yep.
And right off to the sunset.
Yep. He got it. He got his day in the sun that he totally deserved. But so let's kind of forget about the little hiatus that you had there. You're off hiatus again, and you're back on this 37. It's not the same foundation, but you're back to work. So let's talk about where we're at with Joe Delaney now, and what do you have in the works, and what kind of things can Chiefs fans be expecting within the next between now and the Super Bowl? What kind of things can they expect to see?
All right. So how I got back was Vahe Gregorian is a sports reporter for the Kansas City Star, and every year without fail he writes an article on Day of the Tragedy on June 29th. However, this past year in 2020, right after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, he actually did a Joe Delaney article a couple of weeks after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, where he was interviewing Marvin Dearman. Now, Marvin Dearman was the scuba diver who went into that lake to try to save the kids. When I spoke with Marvin after I was introduced to him, he told me that day was so chaotic that when he got the call, he was told that kids were drowning in the pool. And he went into that lake for that purpose. He was starting to remove his gear when someone raced up to him and said, "There's a man in the lake too. There's a man in the lake too." So he had to put his gear back on and hurried back in there. And that's where he found Joe Delaney. And he says, Adam, I will never, ever be able to get past that, because if I knew that, those extra 2-3 minutes might have been the difference between Joe Delaney drowning or Joe Delaney surviving that. And I'm going to take that to my grave. Even though it was not communicated to me, I just realized I had the ability, if I knew, I could have saved his life. The Delaney family, to their credit, they do not blame Marvin Dearman at all. As a matter of fact, they're very close. They're like family. They watched the Super Bowl together. They're actually, I'll come back and get to that in a moment. So he had an epiphany, Marvin Dearman, after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and he was rooting for the Chiefs too, because they become his adopted favorite team.
Sure.
He said, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl 37 years after the tragedy. Joe Delaney wore number 37.
There you go.
He's like, this is fate. And he's like, I want to do something to commemorate this. That park, Chenault Park, there's nothing there. You talk about nothing being done in Kansas City. There's nothing even in the park where he was from. So where it happened, where anything was done. So he told Vahe that story, and he wanted to have something done to celebrate his life. So Vahe wrote an article, and within days, interest began. People started donating, saying we'll do something. And there was a local company, a granite company in Kansas City called Johnson Granite, and they said, we're gonna erect a monument, and we're gonna send it down to Louisiana for the ceremony for the tragedy later this year. And this was in the middle of the pandemic. So that's what happened. And I'm just getting this out here to you. I didn't realize this was having supportive pieces. But this is the monument that Johnson Granite Company did. And if you see this here, that's Carolyn Delaney over there.
Yeah.
And that's Marvin Dearman over here, the scuba diver who's now about 70 years old. So while he covers it, he writes an article in the Kansas City Star. I read it. I'm always drawn to it. I mean, my background, my experience with Joe Delaney, I always want to hear things about it. And it was great. Then he did a podcast. We're doing a podcast today. He did a podcast with a fellow KC Star colleague, Blair Kerkhoff. And Vahe was mentioning about, it was just in Louisiana with his wife to cover this. It was a beautiful, touching tribute. And it was great to be there to see this. But he couldn't help but wonder, why can't anything be done in Kansas City once and for all for Joe Delaney? And Blair's like, yeah, absolutely. But what? And they kicked it around for a few minutes. Best they could come up with was, well, maybe we can name a park after him. And they thought about it like, yeah, we could do that. But he says, but there's something bigger than that. Something has got to be larger than that, but we just don't know what it is. So I'm hearing the podcast, and immediately I'm flooded with ideas. And I'm like, and I realized as I was figuring these ideas out, I'm like, I'm going to email Vahe. And we've never met in any way, shape, or form until I sent this email out. And I'll see what he has to say. Maybe he'll use these ideas and present it in the column as his ideas. I didn't care. A few days go by, and on the 4th of July, he reaches back out to me. I clearly remember where I was. I was starting to celebrate somewhat of a socially distant 4th of July in town. And I get the email. And he's like, Adam, I just want to let you know that when I see an email as long as yours, I normally don't even bother reading it. But you had Joe Delaney in the subject heading. So I may as well see what Adam has to say. And let me just say, Adam, I'm so thankful that I did, because I'm absolutely riveted by what you wrote. This is exactly what I was trying to convey in the podcast. Yeah. I mean, I had 9 ideas. I had 5 ideas for Kansas City to do, and I had 4 more ideas for the Chiefs to do. And he said, with your permission, Adam, I want to present this to the editorial thing. I want to use this as an op-ed piece. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Go ahead and do it. He got back to me a day or so later, and he says, Adam, they're not going to do it. Too much stuff going on with COVID and Black Lives Matter and all these other things going on. But I want to do this. I want to do a story. Can I can I do a story on you and these ideas? I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And this was the middle of July, so there was nothing going on sports-wise at all. All the sports were still shut down. But there I was in the middle of July in the front page of the KC Star Sports section. Vi writes an article about me and these ideas. So I thought that was really, really cool. But after a couple of days, nobody reached out to me. So I realized, okay, I'm at a fork in the road here. I can either take a victory lap. Yay, I made it to KC Star Sports section and go on with my life. I am an attorney in New York. Not a rich attorney where I have deep pockets. I work, I work a regular job at a desk, and it's nice. Help makes the end meet and put bread on the table. That's good. But I am a busy person, so I could go on with my life. Or what Vi did was he opened the door. I made the front page of the KC Star Sports section with these ideas. Yeah. So let me try to see this out, see this through. So I'm like, I'm going to go try and do things. I'm not going to go through all 9 ideas. One of the 9 ideas actually was the 37-yard line marker in Chiefs colors, something the Chiefs would do. Yeah, but what I decided was I'm going to start figuring out what I need to do. So I reached out to the mayor's office, Mayor Quentin Lucas, the current mayor of Kansas City. Mm-hmm. I reached out to him and his secretary, and I said, I want to do something where we could do a day of honor for Joe Delaney. And I want it to happen on Joe Delaney's birthday on October 30th. So we worked with them. He issued a proclamation, which I authored, and Mayor Lucas, adopted it, and he issued it for press release. That last year on Friday, October 30th, 2020, in Kansas City, it was known as Joe Delaney Day. And it was great. And I wrote an article, and I had successfully reached back out to the Delaney family. And besides Carolyn, I'm now speaking with the daughters, especially Joanna and Crystal. And they were so thankful and appreciative that, at long last, Kansas City did something. They had a day in his honor. Now, granted, they're not going to make a holiday out of this. You're not going to see Joe Delaney Day this October 30th or next October 30th. It was just a nice gesture for what happened. I realized that's great, but I need to do something much more lasting, much more permanent. So that led me to the Missouri Department of Transportation. I went to them. I said, I want to see if we can name a stretch of highway and name it the Joe Delaney Memorial Highway. And they said, okay, well, what you need to do is the following. You need to get this consent from the Delaney family. I did that. You need to get Joe Delaney's death certificate. I was able to get that from Joanna. And in my line of work, I see death certificates all the time. But when you see Joe Delaney's death certificate, and you see the date of death and the manner of death and who he survived by, it's surreal to see that. You needed to get legislative sponsorship from the local representative, which is Yolanda Young. I got that. Then there's 2 more things. I needed to come up with $3,200 for the cost of the sign in each direction on I-435, by the way, between exit 66, which is Missouri State Road 350, to exit 63C, which is Raytown Road, right at the cusp of the Arrowhead entrance. I was trying to get the Arrowhead entrances themselves, but it's already been dedicated to Lamar Hunt. So that belongs to Lamar Hunt.
Sure, Lamar Hunt.
I'll take the highway going to Lamar Hunt. And there was actually a Chiefs fan who I met at the Super Bowl, who's from New York. He wishes to remain anonymous, so I won't reveal his identity. But I struck up a friendship with him. I said to him what I was doing and he was interested. He says, "How much is the cost of this?" I told him what it cost. He's like, "Adam, if you can get everything, all the ducks line up in a row, I will pay for the entire cost of the sign." I'm like, I was thinking about just doing this as a fundraiser, as a pitch and a plea to come up with $3,200. He says, "I got this." I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "I'm positive." It's like, "This will happen." So the last thing was you needed to get 100 signatures from Jackson County residents, which is where the sign is,
Yep.
but also could expand to any county that bordered Jackson County in the state of Missouri. So that includes Ray County and Clay County and Cass County and Johnson County. There's a Johnson County in Kansas, but Johnson County,
Yeah.
Missouri, and Lafayette County.
Kansas doesn't count in this situation.
Yeah, Kansas doesn't count. Platte County doesn't even count. Platte County is Kansas City, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Jackson County wouldn't count. So, I mean, even there wasn't COVID, how do I, 1,200 miles away from Kansas City, get 100 signatures? It's good. And I mentioned that to the Missouri Department of Transportation. They said you could get online signatures. He's like, okay. So I reached out to Vi Gregorian, and he and Jeff Rosen, the Casey Star sports editor, they created an petition things, which I got permission from Missouri Department of Transportation to do, and they put it out there. And they got we needed 100 signatures. They got about 60 something signatures that counted, that were valid. They got more. They got 100 signatures, but they were from those Platte County, Kansas counties, and other places around the United States. Thankfully, I had someone from, there's a website that I frequent called Chiefs Planet. It's been around for a long time. There was an author of Casey Star, Kyle Turrell, runs the Chiefs Planet, and he's done a phenomenal job with that. There is a person there named Clayton Wendler, and Clay is really instrumental. He does a lot of really cool videos during the year about Chiefs wins and recaps. There's a lot of movie themes and social media, social media things like that you see there. And he does a great thing with every Mahomes highlight is there. I think even his dad, Pat Mahomes, loves what he does, but he's really, really acclimated with social media. And he and I really haven't spoken until this time. And I reached out to him and said, Clay, I need your help. And I told him what to do. And he dove in with, didn't even put his toes in the water. He jumped right in. He says, Adam, this is a great idea. We got to do this. And he relentlessly pushed this and kept pushing this on all of his platforms. Marty McDonald was also involved too, but Clay was he was a force of nature. He just did what he needed to do. And steadily, the emails started circulating in. By the time Clay was done, we had more than 80 signatures. But again, of those that counted, we had about 60 something from there. We needed 100 signatures. Within a week, we got 129 valid signatures. And I sent to the Missouri Department of Transportation. I told my person, we got it. I set up an account because here I am. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan from New York. Who's going to trust me? I'm a New Yorker. I have no apparent connection with Kansas City. So the Chiefs, they got me in touch with one of their sponsors, Community America Credit Union. They got me in touch with a branch manager. Her name is Brandeis Parks. And we started an account, a brand new account, specifically for the Joe Delaney Memorial Highway. And my guy wired the money into that account. We sent it to Missouri Department of Transportation, and they inspected it. They said everything is fine. But it's going to be taken up for a vote in May for approval. I was thinking that they were going to make their decision by around Memorial Day. Not to be. The very first business day in May, they met and they approved it. So it was amazing. And by this time, local media outlets were the NBC affiliate in Kansas City, KSHB, Channel 41. They did a feature on this. Gabriella Pagan did an outstanding job. She interviewed me. She interviewed the Delaney family, and they really did a tremendous job covering it. So this was great. It was really great. The Missouri Department of Transportation said, you have to also understand one thing, Adam. Because of COVID, a lot of projects have been backed up. We're going to do everything we can to get this up and erected by the time that the Chiefs home football season starts. But please be patient. We may not be having it there, but just know it will be erected, and we'll get it up there as soon as we can. The Memorial Highway signs will be in effect in Kansas City during those stretches for the next 20 years. It's not forever. It's for 20 years, but it can be renewed after 20 years. And I'm 47, going on 48. I hopefully will be around 20 years to extend it. But if I'm somehow not, then, from what I understand, the reaction to the Memorial Highway has been universally praised by Kansas Cityans and Chiefs fans alike. Josh, the next person that is critical of what was done will be the first person, because no one has had a bad word about this. I've gotten so many compliments from this saying, if anyone deserves this is Joe. He's like long time coming. Finally, it's been done. And I know, it makes me feel good that, back then with the 37 Forever Foundation and putting Joe Delaney in the Chiefs Hall of Fame, yeah, I played a small part in Kansas City Chiefs history. But what's being done with Joe Delaney Day and the Memorial Highway and the other thing that I'm going to be getting into with you, I'm playing a small part in Kansas City history right now because I'm doing this to get Joe Delaney the recognition. We got a date. There was a day in his honor. Now there's a Memorial Highway for tens of thousands of Chief fans making the journey on I-435 to Arrowhead. They're going to pass the Joe Delaney Memorial Highway. And for the longtime Chiefs fans and for the knowledgeable Chiefs fans, it's going to be a huge source of pride that they are going to be passing this highway named for the most heroic Chiefs player that ever lived. I mean, is he the most talented Chiefs player? No.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know that. We don't know what he could have done.
We don't know, but I mean, number 15 is, I can imagine.
You're probably correct. 15 is probably more talented than anybody who's ever played.
But yeah, if anybody deserves this honor, it's Joe. I mean, Derek Thomas was a very, very gifted person who gave so much to the Kansas City community, but his manner of death is not Joe Delaney's manner of death.
No.
So you have that, but then there's something even bigger than that. I could easily just fold up my wagon, so to speak, and say, hey, Memorial Highway, Joe Delaney Day, enough, good. But I always had this idea that was mentioned in that article last year that I've been working hardest at. As hard as the Memorial Highway was, that was child's play compared to this. And that is, if Kansas City is known for two things to an outsider like myself being New York, what is Kansas City known for? Well, two things. First thing that I would think would come to mind is, well, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, or a combination of the two. I mean, that's what they're known for right now. They have the best football team that's out there. I know Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl, and yes, they're the Super Bowl champions. I'm not going to be bitter about that, but the Chiefs are, I think, the model franchise right now of what they've been able to do.
Yeah.
And they have the best player in the sport, Mahomes. But if Kansas City is also known for another thing, it's definitely known that it has the best, very best barbecue on the planet. And I mentioned to you last time when we were talking about this, that the last several times I've been to Kansas City, I've been to every meal I have is barbecue, because barbecue in New York is, it's great, whatever, but it pales in comparison to what Kansas City barbecue is. And whether it's Casey Joe's or Q39 or Gates or Jack Stack or Arthur Bryant's and Danny Edwards I've been to, and I've been to Slaps. And there's this place, you're from out of town, I'm from out of town. There's a place 1.5 miles from the airport called Scott's Kitchen. Not to tell you, really good. Kansas City barbecue for sure, but it has a Southwesternish feel to it that makes it unique. And I know I'm doing a plug for them, but I'm just saying that they're right there if you want to get one last barbecue meal.
You're also not wrong. I mean, that place is great.
It's fantastic. So I'm thinking, okay, what if we married the two? What if we did a barbecue contest?
Sounds like a match made in heaven, honestly.
Yeah. Do a barbecue contest in Joe Delaney's honor. Yeah. And we do it during football season. And we get the Chiefs involved in their support. Maybe we could have it at Arrowhead Stadium.
I feel like you could take this a step earlier when you pick the date.
Yeah, and then we could do it maybe, and we have it coincide with Joe Delaney's birthday, which happens to be this year on a Saturday, which is where most barbecue contests are held, Saturday,
Sure.
October. So I did some research. If I'm going to do a contest, well, where am I going to do the contest? I mean, who do I turn to? I mean, I'm an attorney in New York. I don't know the first thing about this thing. I just had this idea. So I did some research and I found out that the Kansas City Barbecue Society, I'll just call them KCBS for short, they sponsor tournaments. They're a non-for-profit foundation that sponsors these tournaments. They have a calendar of events throughout the year. It works like NASCAR, where it's like a point standings. And then at the end of the year, their last contest, the Super Bowl, is in November. And it's reserved for the best point totals from the year. And that's in November. If we have this contest on October 30th, they explained to me, like, Adam, this would be like the AFC Championship game. It would be the last barbecue event before their last grand finale event. And this would be people fighting for the top overall seed going into the World Series. Or if there are a bubble team, for them to finally get enough points for them to qualify, they're going to want to do that. So I realized from my 37 Forever Foundation experience that, well, the Chiefs will act if they see things are being done. So I reached out to the Chiefs once I spoke with Kansas City Barbecue Society, and when I spoke to them, Emily Detweiler, that very first day, when I sent the email, within an hour, she emailed me back, said, Adam, this is an amazing idea. We want in. And she introduced to me other members of the board like Myron Berry, Corey Linton, and we were like, let's do this. So we reached out to the Chiefs. And you may remember opening night against the Texans when they raised the banner.
Yep.
I remember that day, not just for that night, but earlier that day, I had my first of not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 Zoom conference calls throughout the football season with the Chiefs themselves. I spoke with the Chiefs ambassadors. They got me in touch with the events planning department. We had 5 Zoom conference calls that lasted an hour apiece. And it was definitely serious. I mean, if they weren't interested in this, they would have not agreed to meet up with us, or they would have stopped meeting us after the first one. But this had legs. Right after Thanksgiving, they got back to us finally with a proposal to debut the contest at Arrowhead Stadium on October 30th, 2021, with options of having it the next 2 years. And they even said that they had the ability to ask the NFL to have the Chiefs be home that weekend and have it on Sunday night or Monday night to allow for a proper cleanup so that Chiefs fans can tailgate the next day without there being a mess from the barbecue contest from the day before. And I don't know if this is a coincidence or this is actually something that the Chiefs actually did, but the schedule got released last week. And that weekend, the Chiefs are home. And they're home on Monday Night Football. And they're playing the New York Giants of all teams. Although I'm from New York. I'm wondering if the Chiefs, during the course of our conversation, and this is just speculation, but do the Chiefs actually go to the NFL with the request and say, hey, we want to be home this weekend and have us on Monday Night Football, because they wanted to have the contest happen here. The contest, right, is not going to happen there this year because the asking price to have the event there was substantial. I just could not, in good conscience, and Kansas City Barbecue Society also pulled me aside and said, Adam, we know you want to have this debut here. We understand the significance and how amazing it would be, but you have to realize how much of a financial burden this is going to be if you do this. So it's on good terms with the Chiefs. We'll probably circle back to them at some point and have the contest there. But they said, KCBS, Adam, lower your sights. We could find a place in Kansas City and we could have it at a fraction of the cost, and it will be a great success, and it will get the attention that you want, and it will do honor and justice by the Delaneys and Joe Delaney as well. But try to think of another place to do this. So reluctantly, very reluctantly, I'm like, all right, you're right. But I wanted to not give up on this. And when the Memorial Highway was passed, it just gave me more incentive. I'm like, all right, we got the Memorial Highway done. I'm gonna stick this landing here. We're gonna do the barbecue contest. We're gonna try this out. That has led us, and I've not publicly announced this, so this is breaking public news to you. We're not in contract yet, but we're making a lot of progress here. The goal is we are going to hold the event and debut the contest on Saturday, October 30th, but probably a beginning the night before on Friday, October 29th. But the main part of the event will be Saturday, October 30th. And we're looking to have the event at Worlds of Fun, the amusement park in the Kansas City area. That's been around since 1973. It's a very established site. If we can't have it at Arrowhead, you can't ask for a better setup, more known facility in the Kansas City area than here. And they're coming in at a fraction of the cost, and we're probably looking at 54 teams to debut the contest. We could do more, but probably for the debut event, just to make sure that we're not biting off more than we can chew here. 54 seems like a good thing. And hey, 37 years as the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, you have the dedication in the park in Louisiana. Well, the Chiefs won Super Bowl 54. So why don't we have 54 teams to start this contest with Joe Delaney? But the difference between here and the Memorial Highway is there is a price here. It's not going to be free. They are being generous. But when you calculate the cost of reserving the facility and then the cost of this being a legitimate barbecue contest with prizes and trophies, and then getting insurance costs covered, and you're looking at, paying the promoter of the contest and other associated costs like getting, crackers and waters and all these other things that are itemized. These things it's going to add up. I would say that we're looking at about $50,000 to do this contest, which compared to where I was with the Chiefs, it is a fraction of the cost. The Chiefs, again, I don't want to talk about the exact numbers, but if the Chiefs came in at $50,000 for everything, including the everything with the prize allocations, then I'd be announcing to you tonight that we'd be doing this at Arrowhead, which the attention all along. But hey, Worlds of Fun is nothing to sneeze at. They're good, and we're looking forward to cementing this deal with them and having something announced publicly to go public. I have reached back out to Brandeis Parks with Community America Credit Union. We have established a brand new separate account specifically tailored for the barbecue contest. So when this gets announced, there is an address and there's going to be an email. Matter of fact, I think her email is B Parks. So B as in boy, P as in Peter, A as in apple, R as in red, K as in Kansas, and S as in Sam. bparks@cacu.com. I believe that is her email address. I can confirm. I can look at my phone while we're talking and just confirm that. But she has confirmed that it's an active account and that people can reach out to her, and anything that is donated to them, as we're going to try to get donations and sponsors for this contest. We're going to do this. We have 5 months to get this done, and I'm determined to make this happen. I really am. I mean, the Joe Delaney Memorial Highway, it's great, it's significant, but if there's a word to describe the Memorial Highway, it's maybe somber. It's a memorial highway. It's nothing to get really excited about. It's just something to be proud, maybe pride. The Joe Delaney Master Series Barbecue Contest, that's the official name. That's festive. That's fun. I mean, let's celebrate not just Joe Delaney and his life, but let's celebrate what Kansas City is known for, barbecue and the Chiefs. This is how we do it. And it's unique. It's one of its kind. Something that the Chiefs mentioned also when we were talking with them about this is that while the pandemic was happening last year and there was all this downtime, They're actually kicking around ideas to help try to get fans back to the stadium for other events besides football. And one of the things that they were actually thinking about was a barbecue contest. And here we come in with this idea, and they're thinking, well, if this is a success, this is going to lead to other NFL teams to say, we want to do one of our own contests as well. Not a Joe Delaney contest, mind you, but something to be held in the stadium. Now, again, we're not going to do this at Arrowhead to start things off, but there'll come a day if this does debut and is a success, and I have every reason to believe it will be a success, that we'll be doing this at Arrowhead. Maybe we'll do this in Arrowhead in 2023. And on the 40th anniversary of the tragedy, that would be amazing to have the contest at Arrowhead. And maybe by that time, it will become such a great success that not only will the Chiefs say yes to it, but the Chiefs will say, we definitely want to have this every single year in Kansas
You're
City.
not doing this anywhere else.
This anywhere else. But if it's just that we're going to do some Worlds of Fun, we're going to do some Worlds of Fun year after year after year. Hey, I'm fine with that too. That's no problem with them. I've worked well with the person that's on the event sales team over there. She's been fantastic. So wherever it goes, I just want to see this happen, because I do know this. If this happens, I am sure that Kansas Cityans, Chiefs fans, and just people in general are going to get behind this, because why not? This is Joe Delaney we're talking about here, and it's a barbecue contest, and it's going to be on his birthday. There's just so many things that check the right boxes here, and I just think that this is something that is an idea and a project well worth pursuing, and that's what I'm going to be doing tirelessly between now and October, and hopefully this podcast will be met enthusiastically by your viewers. And maybe there's some people that are hearing this and say, you know what, we want in. We want to be able to help you out here. And that's where I'm at right now.
All right, so Joe Delaney is one of our own. Adam Jassy is one of our own as well. And Barbecue, obviously, is a bunch of Kansas City type of sympathizers, is one of our own as well. So you're going to be able to get more details on this from the website, arrowheadkingdom.org. And anything else that you want to say about the foundation that you're essentially kind of putting together, even though this isn't the 37 Forever Foundation, or anything else about Joe Delaney before we get out of here tonight?
Well, I will say this, that Joe Delaney's children and Carolyn, they have resurrected the 37 Forever Foundation, but I'm not involved with it. It's their family, it's their project. I embrace it and I support it. It's based in Louisiana, and it's known as instead of it being the 37 Forever Foundation, it's now been rebranded as the Delaney 37 Foundation. And when you look at their mission statement and their oversight, it practically mirrors what we did. Free swim lessons on underprivileged kids, helping people in need. It's something new that they're doing, which is great. And look, I mean, I'm not looking to make money on this barbecue contest whatsoever. I'm not looking to profit. I just want to see this idea happen. If by some chance we raise enough by way of donations and sponsors, and we actually do turn a profit by some chance, then I'll tell you and I'll announce right here and now, and I want to be held to this, that any profit that we make will be given to the Delaney 37 Foundation. And because, hey, we're doing this for Joe, and his family still lives, and they're doing something worthwhile back home in Louisiana. We want to be able to do that too. One thing I should actually, before I forget, with the barbecue contest, a barbecue contest normally involves 4 categories: ribs, chicken, brisket, and pork shoulder. And we're going to do that for this contest too, with prizes and trophies and things like that. But as a nod to Joe's roots in Louisiana, I'm introducing an ancillary separate category, and it's going to be Louisiana inspired Kansas City barbecue, where you take some Louisiana dishes, whether it's a jambalaya or a gumbo or an etouffee or a po' boy or something like that, whatever you can think of. But if you put a Casey twist to it, that we're going to give out prizes for that too. the way I look at it, this could be actually a part of Kansas City barbecue history that we may be starting here, because if you have some barbecue restaurants that get involved in this contest, Casey Joe's is known for the Z-Man. Gates is known for its mixed plate, et cetera, et cetera. This could be a place where I know this by being at those 8 barbecue restaurants I've mentioned. There's not any barbecue restaurants that I'm aware of that has anything Louisiana style involved in the barbecue. This might open a door for a new dish or two to enter the Kansas City barbecue scene, and it will have its originations from this contest, with the mastermind being this Clark Kent-like attorney 1,200 miles away in New York. I just wanted to see, I think that would be great. It would get the teams to do something very creative, and it could be a lot of fun to see what people can whip up together to make something happen and make this barbecue contest very distinct and unique in what it does. It's going to be a regular barbecue with the ribs, chicken, brisket, and pork shoulder, but to add this extra element it just is another way of paying tribute to the man that was Joe Delaney.
I'm rooting for the crawdad po' boy or the pulled frog leg sandwich.
I'm with you on that.
I will get down on both of those things. Again, love the Louisiana cuisine and love KC barbecue. And if you can meld those two together, just bam.
Yeah, with teams out there fighting for the trip there, you're going to probably get elite caliber teams that would want what a source of pride and honor it would be to be the champion, not just be the champion of specific events, but to be the champion of that event, of being the Louisiana-inspired KC barbecue. That could be what a feather in the cap that is, because that would be the first of its kind to ever be passed, to be bestowed on someone. If that team can win that, that's a big thing too. So there's so much promise. We're talking about Joe Delaney having so much promise and hope and potential. Yeah. This barbecue contest has promise and hope and potential. It really can be a win-win-win for Kansas City. It's the Kansas Cityans, the barbecue scene, its restaurants. I think it's a can't miss. I really strongly believe that. And I'm hopeful that this audience feels the same way. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. Hopefully we'll get a lot of support for this and get this off the ground, because we want this to last, not just for this year. We want this to be an annual contest in Kansas City. And if that happens, I think this will be a staple for the KC barbecue contest. It's not going to be the American Royal, mind you, but it doesn't need to be the American Royal. It could be its own unique, success story. And that's what I'm hopeful that we will have here.
We're a barbecue major. All right. So just keep these names in mind. His name is Joe Delaney. His number is 37. We got Adam Jassy making sure that you never forget those names. So check out arrowheadkingdom.org. Look how you can get involved in this and be looking for a barbecue competition in Kansas City come this October 30th. And Arrowhead Kingdom, all of our Chiefs fans, have a good night.